Okay, so hello everybody and welcome back to our Expose podcast. Today I am joined by Mara once again, but also by Ines. We're very excited to have a new Expose member on the podcast. And we are going to talk about, in 2 episodes, not 4 like last time, the Paris Haute Couture week that just took place 1 week ago. So we're a bit more prompt this time with the outfits analysis. And so this first episode is going to be specifically on the history of Haute Couture and the shows that we deem as good or somehow worthy of being called Haute Couture. And then the second episode is going to be on the bad shows or, some interesting shows, like we like to call them, that left a certain impression on us. Not good, not bad, just let us wondering. And so I guess to start with, what were your guys' impression on this Haute Couture week? Ines, do you want to start?
I mean, you low-key already touched upon it, but as a whole, I think there was a bit of mixed. There was some elements where I was extremely impressed by. We saw different things. We saw things that we haven't seen before, which kind of is also Haute Couture. You always need it's the artist himself, it's the designer himself. He puts himself out there. So there was some aspects that I really thought were very interesting to see, but others where I was very disappointed, and I just thought they really stayed in their comfort zone, which to me Haute Couture is not really about. It's not about just what you wear to the streets, but it's an art piece, and I just thought some maisons were kind of lacking that, so yes, diverging opinions.
I agree. No, I definitely agree with Ines, and I think that for me, nothing was really surprising, because the 2 elements that I kind of tend to see pretty often in fashion weeks is the lack of drama that I like to call, which is something that was quite, self-explanatory when you think about haute couture, and it definitely lacked, which again wasn't surprising because I haven't seen drama like we have seen not a long time ago, but when these designers were in their blooming period, and now everything, I feel like it's kind of more standardized. And at the same time, I wasn't even surprised by the disappointing aspects, because some fashion houses, we were just looking at them and expecting them to fail, unfortunately, because we've seen kind of a downhill slope with some houses that we're going to talk about.
For a long time now.
What about you, Mara?
Well, I mean, I don't really think I have anything new to say. It's just the houses that I was expecting to I liked. I got to discover some, I don't want to say new designers, but some that were new to me that surprised me in this Haute Couture week. Like we're going to talk in this episode, there's one specific designer. It was his first Haute Couture collection. Yeah. And I think he really taught some lessons to some of the older designers or brands on the scene that this is what they should be doing in Haute Couture. But I feel like, because we keep talking about drama and what we would be expecting and everything, but so I feel like in order for the people to understand why we expect such drama and why we have such big expectations of haute couture, we first need to understand what haute couture is, because there is such a history behind it. And so I guess if I can start, so as we have hinted in our previous podcast that we did, haute couture is very different than ready to wear. There's once again 2 weeks in the year, one in winter and one in summer, where designers present haute couture collections. So there's only 2 collections a year, not tens, like any other ready-to-wear. And the particularity of this haute couture is that it comes from a French tradition of craftsmanship and techniques of producing one-of-a-kind garments. So it's the idea that there's nothing like this on earth. You don't mass-produce it to sell it to everybody. It is one of a kind. And it was originated by French-British couturier Charles Frédéric Worth in 1868. And then he later created the Chambre syndicale de la confection et la couture pour dames et fillettes, which turned into the Chambre syndicale de la couture parisienne. And it's been a legally protected label, so not everyone can just call their collections haute couture since 1945. And so we still have fashion brands today who do not produce haute couture collections. And there are certain requirements of a house to be called haute couture. So you have to, for instance, there's a lot of them. We're not going to list all of them. You can research, but it's something like every creation. So every piece needs to be handmade by at least 20 people. So it can't be, there's some very weird requirements. The fashion house in question needs to have at least 2 runway shows per year. A fashion house or a designer needs to sign up 4 years in advance to even be considered to be able to create haute couture shows. So there's a lot of requirements that go into this label of haute couture, and it's not just any garment that we can call, this is haute couture, that is haute couture. It's really about technique and you producing something one of a kind that has never been seen before, which is, I think, where we get our disappointment from, honestly. But So should we go into the shows, or do you guys want to add anything to the history of Haute Couture?
I'm excited for the first thing that we want to present. So we might as well, if you have anything to add.
I think you've gone over everything that's been most important to mention. But yeah, it's very much like, I think just the history very much dates back to like the labels, the introduction of labels. What is Haute Couture? Who can produce it? Who's deemed to present their garments, and what exactly is classified one? This once of a kind. But then also, I read this article which was really interesting, and it was kind of about like the fact that there was so many labels, so many things requirements, that it dropped from 106 in 1946. There was 106 maisons that actually produced their haute couture, and afterwards in like 1970 it dropped to 16 or 19. So there's very much like you need to be very special in order to produce that, and I think that also we can see it today, and I think that's also why we have these diverging opinions about what the haute couture products are. So
yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that, not those numbers actually. That's actually super fascinating. I'm wondering actually, maybe you guys can do the research. We didn't. What's the number of haute couture houses today, or brands that could actually produce haute couture
I think I have
today?
a list of all the names, but I would have to count them down. But what I saw is that it's kind of divided between official members, correspondent members, which are foreign, and there's also like guest members that kind of have appearances in regard to haute couture. So, I mean, we can mention a few if that's
go ahead.
interesting to you guys. So, of course, Chanel, Dior, we're going to see Givenchy, Giambattista Valli, Paul Gaultier, Julien Fournier, Maison Margiela, Schiaparelli, Stéphane Roland. And correspondent members, we have Elisa, which I think we've talked about.
Why?
Yeah.
Why are they there?
Giorgio Armani Privé, Iris Van Herpen, which also had an interesting collection. And an interesting concept. Yeah, it's very creative. What else? Fendi Couture, Valentino, and Victor and Rolf, obviously, that we're gonna talk about. And with guest members, I see Zouhair Mourad. What else? Christopher Jose? I don't even know. There's a lot of people that I haven't even heard of. So I think it's kind of it's a pretty extensive list, I would say. Also Alaya, and which I forgot to mention.
Of course, come on.
Yeah.
Alaya,
so there's a lot of people that I haven't even discovered. So if you guys want to take a look over the official list and maybe discover some designers that you haven't heard of, and they do amazing work. So
yeah, but so since we're talking about designers left and right, new and old, I guess we can start with the show analysis. Now, one of the most controversial talked about shows of this haute couture fashion week was Schiaparelli by Daniel Rossberry. We've analyzed and talked about him before and how we love his designs and everything, but if you guys aren't aware, this show was a bit controversial in a sense, because the three main looks of the show were done in faux fur. That's the disclaimer, first of all. So faux fur, which is interesting because of, sustainability questions, I guess. And then it was meant to represent three animals from Dante's Inferno, which were the wolf, the leopard, and the lion. The lion represented pride, the wolf avarice, and the leopard lust. Yes. And so I guess we can start with these three looks to get them out of the way, and then we can go to just the other regular looks of the collection. What did you guys think?
Well, first of all, might I add the models that were wearing
true.
the garments, which a show in itself, Shalom Harlow, Irina Shayk, and Naomi Campbell, of course. And
can I please say how happy I am that Shalom Harlow is back on the runways.
Exactly, for
because
me,
I didn't even know. I found out that she had Lyme disease in the 2000s, which is why she had to stop modeling for so long.
Yeah, I did not know.
Yeah, and so now that she's back and she's bringing back this little touch of 90s modeling,
she's back.
She's so back. She's in every show, and I think the people listening have already gotten used to the fact that we love 90s models, and so having them back is just amazing. But so yeah, go on. Sorry for interrupting.
So for me, I feel like it's such a contrasting thing to see when we talk about, the technique, which is, of course, taxidermy, silk fur. It's nothing that has to do with, like, real, actual animal torture. But at the same time, the thing that it represents for me, it's kind of contradictory to what the idea was supposed to be. And I don't know. For me, it's still an ongoing debate in my mind as to what extent can we go into representing things on the clothes, even if, behind it, the technique, it doesn't have anything to do with hurting animals, for example, or any practice that would not be accepted. So for me, I don't have an answer, so that's why I want to open the question up to you guys, and maybe you can tell me what you think, Ines.
Yeah.
I think there's two sides of it. I think the first one, I immediately when I saw it instantly, I was like, this is off. Like, this, honestly, we've tried so hard to go away from the fur, to go into sustainability and really, like, preach on that. And then all of a sudden, in this amazing Haute Couture show of this amazing designer with this incredible house, they all of a sudden introduce these animals again, and it's kind of like, are we going back to what we've tried to get away from for so long? So that was the first thing, and then actually I researched into the story, what he wanted to say, and the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, these allegories, this alliteration and this comparison is beautiful, but I was a little confused about why the artist actually made this as fun, the designer made this as a choice. And then the second thing was just that I felt like it overshadowed all the other pieces that were absolutely beautiful, and there was really like, it was such a fine design, it was beautiful figures that were highlighted, and I just thought that these garments, like the wolf, the leopard and the leopard and the lion, kind of overshadowed the other collection. So
I mean, so for me, first of all, in terms of the fur and this question of sustainability, now for me it's borderline grotesque. I'm gonna say it, to put the actual heads of the animals, because even if it's faux fur, it still in a sense represents taxidermy, and since the whole point was an allegory, like you said, to Dante's Inferno, it's like, if it's an allegory, you don't have to specifically, super realistically design those heads of those animals and put them there as if it's like a prize on the model. On the other hand, the idea of reintroducing fur in a sustainable way, I think is really, really cool, because fur in fashion, aside from the awful, unsustainable aspect of it, stylistically, let's say, is a very good point, let's say, to any outfit. And so as an haute couture designer, let's say if he hadn't done those heads, for you to promote the aspect of fur, but also promote a sustainable way of doing it, a sustainable technique of producing it that maybe other houses could be able to use in their further collection, so that you have the look that a lot of people covet, but then you also have the sustainability that nowadays is key to the luxury industry, I'm sorry to say. I think that would have been that's a very positive aspect, but as you said, I think it was so overshadowed by just these heads of these animals. And in a sense, I mean, I think I don't even know what to say. Honestly, good on him that he did it, because the show got a lot of attention, but I'm not, just the heads of the animals in themselves, I'm not super happy with. Like, if we look at the Shalom Harlow look, if the head wasn't there and the dress was just as it was, it would have been just as good, if not a lot better. So the look in itself, I mean, Naomi Campbell's, the fur even in itself, I don't like it. I don't think it's what it's supposed to be, but the Shalom Harlow look, even if the head weren't there, I think it would be so much better, and it would promote sustainability, and it wouldn't promote taxidermy. I don't know. I think there was just a little bit of a misstep there with the animal heads.
Yeah, I feel like Rosberg usually, kind of knows how to play on the drama, but this time I feel like he kind of confused drama with controversy, because it could have been so much more dramatic if not for this really peculiar aspect of it. And also even the giving the piece to Kylie Jenner was front row.
I didn't even want to
wearing
talk
the
about
same
that.
dress, which is another subject on its own.
And if anybody who has seen this show on the internet and has read the news that, oh my gosh, big shock, Kylie Jenner wore the same outfit, because there's been so many headlines that were saying this, please do not believe them. The designer gave the lion head to Kylie Jenner to wear. Sadly, I don't want to bring more attention to these individuals, but just to clear
to point it out.
To clear this thing out, that like, it's not that Kylie Jenner saw Irina Shayk wearing the lion head and they were both like, oh my gosh, we showed up in this. Like, it's not like that.
It's staged, guys. We're sorry to break it to you, but
But then again, I mean, it was a great way to promote the brand, because everyone started talking about it. That's how you do marketing. That's
Kardashians are great marketing.
In both ways. First with the fur, like, people get their attention. You're confused about it. You see this on the market. You don't really know what's happening, but then you actually research into it, and again, this allegory is extremely interesting. But then that's how you get the attention.
Yeah, for sure.
I wasn't a fan of the. Just the alluring to the taxonomy. I was just like, no.
But so now let's move away from these three looks and let's actually discuss again, another 3 looks from the collection, because the collection was more than just these 3 animal heads. It was actually a very beautiful,
Exactly.
rich in textures and materials and silhouettes collection. And so, what do you guys think about it? Ines, maybe you want to start?
Sure. I thought it made reference to the 1937, just like the shocking perfume, like I think the perfume was in 1937, where they brought out like this entire shocking and the pink and the flashy colors. Again, it all goes with what they've always produced, kind of like eye attention and eye-catching things. And it also made reference to the 1950 kind of tuxedo, and like very figure-fitting. I think also the corsets and stuff. So I think it's just as a genre, I love the colors, I love the shapes. And again, I thought it was beautiful. And
about the thing you said about the silhouettes, I don't have the exact quote, but Daniel Rossberry said that he wanted to approach this collection by approaching surrealism and the trompe-l'œil in a different way. And one of the ways he did this trompe-l'œil thing is taking, for instance, these tuxedos, like you were saying, that are very manly, traditionally clothes, obviously, but then do this overtly feminine, exaggerated silhouette of like the tiny, tiny waist, the big shoulders, the big hips, but not in a vulgar way. It's in a very like classy couture way to be done, and I thought that was really cool. How about you, Mara?
For me, kind of looking at what Daniel Rossberry has been offering lately, I was kind of, I can see the continuity of what he does, and kind of looking at what he did last year, I could say that I like the last year's collection more.
The Haute Couture one? Or the ready-to-wear?
I mean, I think
the Haute Couture one was something else.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing, and I'm not saying this is not, because I really loved even the close detail, that the attention to detail that he paid to everything, and the way the material looks. And now you can really see that we're talking about haute couture, and that we're talking about really carefully crafted silhouettes that you guys talked about. And I think it's really beautiful to see this kind of classic with a twist on the runway, which I really loved. And also the colors, I love them so much, especially the green. I have a thing for emerald green.
And he had a whole, we didn't put the photo, but he had this whole look of like a huge corset, like we see in the third photo, but it was all made of like emerald green stones. I don't know if it was actually emeralds, probably not, but.
And the velvet and the little stones, everything looking very precious. But also the contrast a bit, like if you look at the first picture, it's kind of, a princess getting out of bed. This is what I see when I look at the first picture. And I think he played very well with proportions, as he always does.
Oh, yeah. And what I also loved very much is that, like, after the last few shows, because like you said, I think the brand really, I mean, in mass media or in the people that don't necessarily follow fashion super attentively, the brand gained a lot of visibility now after their last haute couture collection, I would say, after that extremely black and gold collection. And so obviously that's synonymous with the Schiaparelli brand, and it became even more synonymous through Rossberry's collections. But what I think is super interesting is that now he's not stepping away from it, but he's diversifying it back into colors, back into other materials, other silhouettes. And so I think that's really good that he first started with this like show-stopping thing of the exaggeration of the black and gold, and now he's kind of going back to the roots of the brand, of other colors, other materials, but also in a way that's him, not necessarily Elsa Schiaparelli. So it's a very nice continuity and disruption at the same time of what the brand was and is today. I
agree. I think his signature is so strong, and it's such a unique thing to see a designer nowadays being so, like, when you see a Rossberry, when you see, it's Schiaparelli when you look at the looks. Yeah. I think that's great.
For sure.
No, it was beautiful. I really liked it. And also, I think, to some extent, it kind of made reference, or kind of like, for me, I just saw it and I was like, oh, this reminds me so much of Dior in like 1957, where it was like the new look.
Yeah.
Which kind of like, I really like it when designers kind of re-emphasize what was in the past, kind of revisit it.
I mean, it emphasized that more than the Dior couture show did, which is disappointing to say the least.
Not surprising, but...
Oh, not surprising at all. But so since we talked about Schiaparelli and we kind of went along all aspects of the show, I guess we can move on to another very, very interesting show. Very interesting show of this Haute Couture Week, which was Paul Gaultier. And if I may start just a bit once again with this more history aspect of the show. So in 2020, Paul Gaultier announced that he would kind of leave the house and he would have designers for a few period of years, let's say, design his both of his haute couture collections every year. And so this haute couture collection was designed by Haider Ackerman. Oh, and another fun fact I forgot to mention, Jean-Paul Gaultier got this idea of bringing other designers in when he was working at Patou in 1987, when Christian Lacroix left the brand, and Gaultier wanted to implement this system and have designers like Vivienne Westwood or Thierry Mugler, who we've both lost very, very sadly. And this idea was rejected. So now that he got his turn, he said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to bring other designers. And I think it is absolutely wonderful that he's doing this. So yeah, what do you guys have to say about the show?
It was such a relief to see, and also a surprise, because at least I don't expect anything to hit me very hard, during Haute Couture week, but I think he did such a beautiful job bringing back the subtlety of Jean-Paul Gaultier, the shapes, and I think he also said in an interview that this was his try to bring back Gaultier's quieter side.
I have the exact quote.
And I think it sums up perfectly what he did with this collection. And, Jean-Paul Gaultier wasn't just the crazy designs, the drama, which of course we love, but there's also this soft side that shows how craftsmanship is done.
Haider Ackerman used the word magical twice in this quote, where when he was describing kind of how he wanted to go back to Gaultier's designs. And honestly, the show was quite magical. The way the models were coming down the runway, the way they were showing the clothes, and the clothes were spectacular in themselves, the way they were constructed.
Yeah, for me, that's more what I would point out. For what I really loved was just the way, initially, I don't know if you saw the show, but it starts with just like this beeping in your ear, and you're kind of confused what's going on. And then you have these beautiful models that just walk into this like icy blue setting, walk through it, and you slowly have like, after 10 models, you start having a little voice that gets introduced, and then you actually have music, and then you reach a climax, and it kind of like goes back down. And I just thought it was so subtle, and you could really because there was barely anything happening in the background, barely anything with sound, anything with the words even. You really could focus on the models that were so simply dressed, but so elegant. For me, the word was just elegant. The way he pointed out, I think it was absolutely beautiful.
And once again, the focus on the techniques, if you look at the clothes, the way they're constructed, it's so geometrical and just done in such a good way that we just don't see anymore. And it's disappointing that we don't get to see it anymore, but when we have these little flashes of seeing it, it's a breath of fresh air. Doesn't even begin to describe it. It's so unexpected to see such a good show, I think, and such a, I don't know, even historical, I would say, because of the lack of these kinds of shows we have nowadays. It's just...
Yeah, I think building off of what Ines said, and also you as well, about the historical side and the music, I saw an article that was talking about how the show was constructed, and it talked about the music and the soundtrack, and it said that at the beginning there were like tiny whispers of the names of the models as they were walking by, and then at the end he also did something, I think, as a homage to Jean-Paul Gaultier when he kind of tapped into the human rights kind of ideal that Jean-Paul Gaultier was so passionate about as well, and he kind of put this song by an Iranian artist, and it was referencing the killing of Masha Amini in September 2022, and I think that's such a powerful thing, because at the beginning, you have this very subtle, very kind of introducing you into this world, and then you still get the power that the brand represents for so many aspects, for the craftsmanship, for the historical aspect, for the human rights side of him that he always kind of showed in what he did. So I think it was very, very well thought, and
completely
kudos to Haider Ackerman. What can I say?
And if we go into the actual looks, I mean, my favorite is the third one, the one with the black coat. I'm sorry, I have to cough. It's sixth season. But so my favorite is the third one, and I just like how it's this black coat, but it has all these colors underneath everywhere, and it's just so beautiful. And then how it matches with the model's hair, and the dress coat is actually backless. It's absolutely beautiful. Yeah,
I love that too.
Sorry, we had to take a little cough break. Ines was saying.
I was saying that just as a whole, it's such an art piece, because even the music construction, like even to me, it was like as if there's a dance show that's about to be put on by some contemporary artist, and it really was just a piece of art, and like whether it be design, whether it be dance, whether it be music, whether it be anything, just everything together was beautiful. And like you were saying, the third one for me also struck me the most.
Yeah.
Because it's so simple. It's so simple, and yet it's so well thought out. It's really just réfléchi, like with all the colors that come out, with the arms that are blue exactly, and then below you have like the green that kind of comes out of the skirt. That's beautiful. I also love the second look. I don't know.
The pink one?
It was
Same.
beautiful. It's just elegant. It's so long, and I love the strap, how it's kind of crossing.
The construction, the geometry that goes behind it, it's just breathtaking. The hair of every model, the hair and the makeup is just gorgeous everywhere.
And I have to say, even though, we might think that it's self-explanatory, that when we see haute couture, it's going to look rich, it's going to look well thought out. Not the case all the time.
Oh, no.
But here you can see the materials like flowing on the models. And even here in the middle picture, the soft pink and the little strap that just goes over her shoulder, and everything is so dainty. It's so beautifully done. I don't even think I can choose between what we have here, but they all show the lengths of the craftsmanship of the house.
And I think before people say that, when looking at these haute couture shows, that, oh my gosh, they're not wearable. It's supposed to be wearable art. It's not supposed to be a regular jacket or a regular pantsuit. It's supposed to be something completely different that takes you completely out of the ordinary. And I think this show really accomplished it while still somehow staying grounded in...
I think it's wearable.
No, I mean, I know, but for us, because we love fashion and everything, but I'm saying for other people who might not necessarily be so much into it, it's about the creativity and all of this, really this craftsmanship and this vision for it to be a completely new vision. And I think all the three designers that we chose for this particular episode of the good designers of this haute couture, we could really show this in very different ways, very, very different ways, but...
For me, the first one, though, I'm less of a fan.
Really?
I think because I do like it when it is wearable. In some aspect, I'm just prone to liking something if I could see it being worn, you know? And just the first one, I'm a bit like, I don't know if I would... It's art. It's a piece of art. It's definitely, like, with the shape of it.
If I saw Tilda Swinton wearing this, let's say, at an award show, I would be like, I bow to you, my goddess. Like, I don't know, I think this would be very wearable obviously in a specific setting and with a specific styling.
Yes.
Of course. But once again, these are not meant to be worn during grocery shopping, let's say.
Yeah,
for sure. But also the models, I think you kind of made reference to it. The models are so well chosen for the outfits.
Perfectly chosen.
I don't think the third model could wear the first one as well as the first one, and the second one could not wear the third one as well as the...
And that's so important. It's so key, because I remember when we were doing the first podcast back in October, I don't know when we recorded them, when we were talking about Tom Ford, and I don't remember if we said this during the podcast, but when we were discussing it before, we were saying how certain looks, not the best as they were, could have looked so much better on different models. And it's so key to choose the right people who have the right, not even look, but vibe, allure, let's say, to the clothes, the garments that you put them in. And I think, I don't know, just everything was done perfectly for this show, just perfectly, I think.
I agree.
I honestly agree, and I never looked too much into Paul Gaultier. Like, I've never really looked much into his fashion, and it's beautiful. I was so pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
I was really happy.
I mean, Jean-Paul Gaultier in the 90s was just the drama. That we keep saying.
Even the latest thing that, the Y project, that the Jean-Paul Gaultier XY project, and you see those, and you kind of have if it's the first time that you come into contact with the designer, you have this idea, and then you go and you see the haute couture, and you it makes you curious to go a little bit back in time, and I think that's...
But see, even that, the Y project thing with Jean-Paul Gaultier, what's super interesting is, because, for instance, we tend to complain at this podcast about how there's no more drama, and how fashion has become so minimalist, but in a bad sense. But so if you look at that, I think that's the perfect example of how fashion has become minimalist, because the drama he was doing in the 90s of these huge garments with a lot of details and everything is very different than these body-fitting dresses or tops that have kind of colored and silhouettes of bodies on them, like, I don't know, belly buttons and breasts and things like that. And so I think that's a right example of how you can minimize the clothing and the styles by still keeping the interest and the drama in them. So
And the
take note.
signature of the brand, which
For sure.
again
For sure.
doesn't happen too often.
Yeah, I just know him from like Madonna's cone.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That's how I
Although,
know
you know,
him.
the last collection, the last designer that did this for Jean-Paul Gaultier was Olivier Roustin from Balmain, and he kind of tried doing those corsets in a certain way. He gave one of the main looks to Kim Kardashian again.
Yeah.
What can we do? And I didn't like it as much, for instance, as I like this collection, maybe because I'm not that big of a fan
Yeah.
of Olivier Roustin, but
Yeah, I'm more minimalist. So for me, like when I see these things, perfect example, third dress.
Yeah.
It's so minimal and yet such a little touch of something. So I'm more of a, I like it when they're more soft on there. I know that you two
Yeah.
are a bit more glamorous and a little more, but yeah.
But so now we're talking about minimalism
Yes.
versus maximalism and drama. This third show
That is for you
is
too.
the perfect example of the drama we were wanting. So this is a new designer, new in the sense of this is his first haute couture collection. His name is Robert Wun. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly.
I think so.
Yeah, and an interesting thing actually, because I didn't know anything about the designer and I researched it, and obviously when you see the looks, which I guess are on the screen right now for you guys, you can already you're wondering what's this idea behind this burnt dress, this wine spilled all over the dress. And I researched, and apparently the show is entitled Fear, and the clothes in themselves were meant to represent the fear he had while designing the collection in itself, and that he was so scared of ruining the clothes while designing it and not being able to show his first haute couture show, which I just think is so interesting and just
Yeah.
fascinating. To just do a show based off of your fear of ruining your own show is just so good.
Mhm. But it was also pretty, if I got the story right, he was very unexpected for him to actually be able to present his haute couture garments. Last year, in like 2022, he won the AMDA,
I think so.
MDMA, or how do you say, ANDAM.
Yeah.
award.
I think so.
I don't know
I think
if
so.
I'm pronouncing that right.
No, I think so.
But he won that prize, and upon that, I think his career really like took off, and from there he got the invitation to this haute couture. So I thought that was very fascinating because it was not like an old brand that we always see again
Mhm.
and again, but it's kind of a new, fresh start. And
Look at
where
it.
went.
It's
Yeah.
so good. It's a new person and it's so good.
And if you think about the fact that he launched his label in 2014, like that was literally the first time that he like delved seriously into fashion. It's fascinating. And again, he was on the radar, but he wasn't at the same time. Like he dressed Lady Gaga, he dressed Celine Dion, but at the same time, I personally never heard of his name. Maybe I've seen what
Never.
he did, but his name never. And I think this was such a good way. And also the fact that he closed the haute couture week, and good for him.
Oh,
what can
in
I
what
say?
way did he close it?
Exactly. And as you said, teaching lessons on some old stubborn brands that
I mean,
are not delivering.
not at all, and they haven't been for years.
I just
But-
think it was fresh. It was really,
Yeah.
and his things, I mean, overcoming his fear, kind of the moral of what he was trying to do and what he was saying. I also think that can't be neglected, and I think just the way it turned out beautiful, the way he stained his beautiful white wedding dress, or the way I think he put on fire, or it was on fire
Yeah.
when he put the white wedding dress.
But
It's
everything, like
beautiful.
if we look at the middle look, how he made these, because it's not water, obviously, that's dripping off of the model, but it looks exactly as if it's raining on the clothes. So the technique to do that, it like you don't think of it necessarily. You're like, oh, okay, it's a
Does it
model
remind you
that's
of the
in rain.
Mugler dress?
Yes, of course, the Kim Kardashian Met Gala Mugler dress.
Let's not associate Kim Kardashian with the Mugler.
But sadly,
I know. But no, I agree.
Promotion. That's how you.
But they're so above this.
And also the fact that a lot of houses kind of come up with these stories and concepts which are supposed to explain the sometimes disaster that happens on the runway, and this time it's so coherent. And I found this quote about kind of the way he designed and imagined the clothes, which was really interesting. And if you guys want to hear it, I
Yes,
can read it to
please.
you. He said, "I really questioned what is haute couture. In my head, I imagined artisans and tailors in ateliers wearing all white with gloves in fear of stating the delicate garments, which made me think, why not turn all of that fear into beautiful pieces?" And this is what he did, and he
Yeah.
did it so well. And I don't know about you guys, but when you look at the clothes, do you feel as if they would be, I don't know, cheaper than something else that you've seen on the
Absolutely not.
runway? Because I don't think so, right?
we chose these two white looks, and in general white, and especially because it's destroyed, you can say that, oh, maybe the material isn't the richest. Doesn't matter. But if you, I think for me the best we chose these white looks because they represented the drama we've been longing for. But I think the best example of how it does not look any different from any old school, let's say, fashion house is the middle one.
Yeah.
Because it does not, like, it might have as well have been done by Dior, even though it's not, you know, Dior would never do this nowadays. Maria Grazia, what are you doing? But so it doesn't seem at all, I don't know, it just seems, it's so good. Although I do have one little complaint.
Say?
The last look, the shoes. What is coming out of that dress? It's a monstrous platform. I mean, and I know we're in the era of platforms, but this isn't.
It's a little overstepping the platform.
A bit too much.
I just think the spills and the burns and the whatever just really make it art. I mean, the other pieces would be beautiful pieces, but again, then I think you two would come back and say it's a bit boring. But now, with the spills, that's what makes it the art.
I mean, it makes the dresses. If not, it would be white dresses with a little jupe. I don't know.
And I think it's very interesting what you said, that you know, it's so easy to make white look cheap in these instances. And if you look at the last look, I was going to say the gloves, because you see the material that we often see in like mass market stores, whatever, because it's probably mesh or...
Mesh.
Yeah. And it still doesn't break off from the elegance and the kind of forbidden elegance that it has, you know, with the beetroot paint and whatever he might have used to create the wine stains. I think it's
and the drama, like
ideal.
there's other looks, like this collection, I really urge the people listening to research it. There's a look where the model is wearing a mask that's almost made out of knives, and she's holding a knife like this, like it's really drama filled, and I love it. So yeah, what were your thoughts, let's say your general thoughts after these 3 good shows, or just the good shows in general after Fashion Week, Haute Couture Fashion Week?
You know, thinking about it, at the beginning I said that I was not surprised, no big emotion came out of it, but still it fills my heart to see these shows, and especially in the light of, I know I always say this, but what's happening today? And not even that, I feel like, you know, I think that's what I want to say, like, even if the climate of fashion would not be as it is today, I feel like I would still have a very individual appreciation for each of these shows. And I feel like, again, discovering Robert, for example, it's going to stay with me. So I feel like I'm leaving with something from this fashion week, and I'm really grateful for that. And I think it brings back to, you know, the beauty of fashion and what it does to the hearts of people.
The one thing that made me really happy, I mean, for me, undeniably, the Jean-Paul Gaultier show was my favorite. And what made me really happy is because this whole idea of Jean-Paul Gaultier calling in new designers, as we said, is that he's going to need a replacement eventually, because he kind of wants to leave this fashion world. I mean, stop designing in this sense. And, you know, after Karl Lagerfeld died and Virginie Viard took over Chanel, and still am kind of disappointed in the direction that the brand is going on today. We still don't know what Gucci is going to look like under the direction of this new creative designer they chose, a creative director, that they chose. And so now to see that a brand like Jean-Paul Gaultier could put out a collection with a designer that is not from this specific brand, that wasn't under Jean-Paul Gaultier's helm, and could do it so well, just gave me hope, kind of, that fashion houses can continue even without the designers that originated them and without their vision, that they can still go on and do something amazing in this fashion world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you've kind of already, and we've said it before, I just think these 3, just the looks that we went into, I think were so different. They were all very unique in their own ways. They all pointed out different things, and yet we all appreciated them and liked them in different ways. So I just thought that was what fashion to me is, or haute couture.
Should be.
So, yeah, I was happy to see that.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, thank you guys for listening to this first episode of Haute Couture Fashion Week review. And please tune into our second episode, which is not going to have such a light tone, because we are going to be talking about the shows that disappointed us.
Or that were interesting.
Yeah. But so tune in. That might be very fun.